Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat. And today we're looking at searching, sorting, and filtering Visual Basic Data Grid Views. And we should probably get the slideshow going, would help. So yeah, we're going to load up a data grid view as we have done in previous lessons, but this time we're going to search for items and just with those items filter it down and just show a limited view of all of the data. And we'll sort it in a particular order, so it's like in date time order or something like that, so that you can look at things and find things easily as we need to do in real computer applications. So if you're building an application, this lesson will be very useful to you. All right, so what we've got here for this lesson is a file of doctor's appointments. So we've got our doctor, the date, the time, who the patient is, how much the charge was there in dollars, and whether they've paid or not, just using Y or N for yes or no to indicate whether they've paid. All right, so that's the data we're going to use. We've got three doctors, Dr. Cretin, Dr. Brainiac, and Dr. Von Fritz. All right, so there are doctors, there are appointments. And the finished application, what's going to happen is that it'll load up all of the doctors we just saw into this top data grid view, and there's a scroll bar on that where you can scroll up and down. Now, this is only sorted in an order, I think, of the most recent ones at the top. That's the only sorting we're able to put onto that data grid. But what'll happen is that, say you wanted the appointments for Dr. Brainiac, you'll go to this right-hand part where the searching is, and with the drop-down list, choose Brainiac, and then click on doctor name. And what will happen in this bottom data grid where it says search results is that we will just get the appointments for Dr. Brainiac. And if you have a look, that they are sorted so that this is the most recent date here. And we go from earliest in the morning to afternoon, but you need a 24-hour clock set up to do this. So 3:30 in the afternoon is actually 15:30. And then we've got the days before here, so the 23rd and the 22nd, and notice that on the same day, the 23rd here, it goes from 10:30 in the morning and 14:30 or 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon. So we managed to do sorting on the time in ascending order, and the appointment date is in descending order, okay? So we've got all that set up in the search results. So we're going to be learning sorting, all right, to get these in order, searching so that we can just pick out all the Dr. Brainiac appointments here. And the effect is we've got filtering. Instead of looking at that whole data table of all of the doctor's appointments, we've filtered out and we've just got Dr. Brainiac's appointments here. All right, now another one we'll do is the unpaid bills query. Now that just requires no input at all. So the date time picker down here, this was the 18th of June when we were doing this, developing this, just has today's date in there. But what will happen with unpaid bills is you don't need to put in a doctor or a patient or anything. You just click unpaid bills. And any of these ones that have the paid, not ticked, which means that they have not paid for that appointment yet and paid for seeing the doctor, all of those ones there are going to show up in this unpaid bills search results, okay? And so they're sorted in doctor order. So we've got Brainiac coming before Cretin, and they're also in descending date from most recent to oldest as well. Okay, so that's all working fine because in our original data we showed you there were 4 unpaid appointments. All right, so this is going to be a super long lesson, but we're going to cover a lot of learning in it. And also, because we're kind of a slow talker, we suggest you play this lesson, like go to the Tools cog and click on that and change it to 1.5x or 1.75x, just so that plays a bit faster and doesn't hold you up with our slow talking. All right, so the things we're going to do in this lesson is we'll set up a data grid view on the form that's going to show all those doctor appointments. So that was that top data grid view that we were showing you. And then that data grid view gets loaded from an external XML file. And this is work we have done in previous lessons, but we'll go through all of the steps again in this lesson just for review purposes and just in case some people are only watching this video and haven't watched the others. We'll set up the search buttons and data entry boxes on the right-hand side there for setting up search and filter criteria. We'll create those different searches, like looking for the doctor, looking for the unpaid bills, looking for the doctor plus a particular date, all those things, and get those filtered results in that bottom data grid view that was on that form. Now, to do the sorting, you actually need to set up a program data table. So we define a data table in the program, load all our search results as we find them into that, and then we can process that data table before we put it out onto that lower data grid that's on the form. All right, so we're going to do the separate data grid view down the bottom. Also, you need to clear and reset that bottom data grid view in between searches. So we'll show you how to do that as well, and also how to fix it so that that data grid view doesn't just keep accumulating results in it, that it'll do one set of results and we can clear them out and then do the next set. Because if you don't do that, what happens is it just keeps adding each set of results in so that that bottom data grid view gets filled up with all of the previous search results as well. And we'll set up a combo box so you can do the old drop-down list to pick which doctor you want. And we're going to set up date time picker, which I don't think we showed you before. We should have had the click and pick of the date calendar items probably back in the dates lesson, but I think that dates lesson got too big or was running over time, and for some reason I don't think we did it in there, but we'll certainly do it in this lesson and fully explain it. So like we said, this is a really long lesson. So what you might want to do is go down into the video description. You can see that timeline there, which has got all of these different parts as we do them, and maybe just do a bit of this lesson and then stop and have a break, and then you can come back and use that timeline another time to do the rest of the lesson, because it's going to be a huge lesson to just do in one session or one sitting. Okay, now the first thing we need to do is create that XML file for the appointments data. So we saw that kind of spreadsheet of the data. That needs to go into an XML file, and you need to look at our previous lessons if you have no idea what an XML file is. But basically we've got a data set here called DS Appointments, and each DTAB appointment here is a record inside that data set. So this is one appointment for Dr. Cretin here, another one for him. Here's a Brainiac appointment and another Brainiac. And there's lots more as we saw in that spreadsheet. This is viewing them in, excuse me, Microsoft Edge, which makes them look nice and easy to read. But to edit them, you'll have to open them in, do it all in Windows Notepad is a great editor to do this in. And just when you're trying to find XML files too with Notepad, make sure down the bottom if you're trying to open things up that it isn't on .txt files, because if it is, when you're trying to open a file, it won't find it because this is a .xml. So you need to always make sure your Notepad's set on all files, okay? Not just text files, so just be aware of that. That's something to know about Notepad that we've noticed our students have been having a bit of problem with. They can't find their XML file because Notepad's set only to look for .txt. So make sure your Notepad's set up to look for all files, not just txt. So look, it's going to have quite a few records in it, but you can make your first one and then copy and paste to make the others like we showed you in the XML lessons previously. But if you're stuck for time and don't want to spend all the tedious time making that, you can get the downloads for this lesson. We've got the full doctor appointments XML file as part of those downloads, all right? So check in the video description there for the link to the downloads, and perhaps just might be easiest just to get that XML file from the download. So we're starting a new project called Search Data Grid, and to start off with, we're not putting much on it at all. We're just putting a heading. This is called See the Best Medical Center, the best doctors. You can see them. Our experienced team are the best in the business. All right, so we're just having kind of a big heading there and a smaller little subheading. And in here is where that data table is going to go, but it takes a bit of a while to build that data grid view, which is going to go in there. So we're just making this previous form, and now we've got to make a bound data table in our project, and then it's going to be connected up to the form, and we can get it connected up to the file. So rather than just pulling out a data grid view from the side of VBNet, we're going to actually build one that's bound up into the project, and that gives us a few more options with what we can do, especially since we get the nav bar with the search buttons and all those sorts of things. So we're doing the bound data grid view, which takes quite a few more steps. All right, so we'll remember that from previous lessons. If you haven't done previous lessons, here it is. So we need to right click on our project here. So our project is called Search Data Grid. So in Solution Explorer, we're right clicking on that and we're saying add, and we want to add a new item. All right, now the new item we want to get is a data set. So common items data set, make sure it's a data set you're getting. And see here how we called this DS Appointments, because we knew we were going to use one of these data sets for it. So because that is called DS Appointments there with a S on the end, this one has to be called DS Appointments.xsd. So make sure those names are the same. A common mistake is this one's called DS Appointments, and then you make this one just called DS Appointment without the S, and then it won't work. So that name there has to match this name exactly. And then just click on Add. That's step 2 completed. Step 3, what will happen is you'll be taken into Visual Basic and dsappointments.xsd will open in a tab here. And what you'll see in the toolbox are these things. And we need to drag out a data table onto this open area here that's part of DS Appointments. So drag the data table out onto there and then right click on the top of it, and as shown down the bottom here, we need to call it DTab Appointment, spelt and matching exactly the same way as those DTab Appointment headings were on each of our records in the XML file. So that has to match up as well. Make sure that's spelt properly. And then away we go to the next step. Now in the next step, we're going to add all the fields for each record. So remember we had a doctor, a date, an appointment time, a patient, all those sorts of things. So we've got to add all them in. Now we're going to add them in like this. We're going to call them the same names as in the XML file. So we've got app, app. Now is that correct? App doctor for the appointment. All right, so we're going to call it app doctor, app date, app time, app patient, app charge, app paid. So some of them are system string. Because this is date, we decided to call it, give it the type system date time. And we decided to give this one system Boolean. Now later on, there might be some issues with that, but this sort of looked good at the time. So we're trying to show you a few things here of how to fix up stuff when you make mistakes too in this video. So it's not all going to be perfect. We've done that on purpose. So anyway, usually system string is a good idea for all of them, but we just thought we'd do something different here because that's a date. So why not use date time? And that's yes, no. So why don't we use Boolean for true, false? So anyway, we add our first one. So we go click on the heading of that data table and go add column, or Control L is the quicker way. And then we type in there app doctor, that's the name of our first field. The data type's is system string, and we don't need to change anything else. And then we'll do Control L, and our next one's app date. So we'll type app date in there, but for that one we were picking system date time. So in this one, data type, we'd pick system date time. And just keep going through them until you've added them all. The last one, app paid, down the bottom here, app paid. What'll happen with that was we chose system.boolean for the type. And then you'll have this, you'll have your data table, your record here with all of the same fields that we had in the XML file. And of course, they're all in the same order. Make sure they're in the same order. So whether they paid or not was at the end, and the doctor name was right at the start. So that has to match up the order as well, exactly with the XML file, or it isn't going to work. And on to the next step. So that's kind of set all that up. So what you do is you click on the Save All button up the top here, and then you just close that down. So this little X in the corner of the tab, hit that. So make sure you do a Save All and then close that down. And if you need to go back into that at any time, in the Solution Explorer, it's there, dsappointments.xsd that we made. You can double click that and go in and make changes. And later on, we will actually be doing that. All right, now we've got to get that data grid, that data table, sorry, that we've just made, that bound data table. Be carefully made with those steps. We've got to get it out onto the form. So what you do is you're on your form, make sure your form is opened up, or it's still open in your screen. And then you go up the top and you go View, Data Sources, Other Windows. Okay? And when you pick, so you go View Other Windows Data Sources, that order, View Other Windows Data Sources. When you click on Data Sources, what will happen is it will open up this panel in the side, the far left-hand side where your toolbox is, that sort of area. And there's a couple of little arrows on it, and you need to click those little triangle arrows to open it up so you can see things. So you click it to open it up to see DTab Appointment, the name of the records which are in there. And then if you click again, it'll show you all of the fields which are in each record as well. It's going to list those out. So we need to click those two little triangles, get that all listed out so we can see those guys and check that they are there and they're in order. And then on DTab Appointment, if you click on that, there'll be a down arrow, and you can either have details or you can have DataGridView or none. Now we want to use DataGridView. So DataGridView is going to give us this spreadsheet type view, which we've used before in previous lessons. So we just need to check out the dtab appointment here with this down arrow, set it to DataGridView, and then that'll all be good to make a DataGridView. And now we can finally put it on the form. So where it's here in the side, dtab appointment, you just hold your mouse button down, you drag that out onto the form and just put it there. And then you will get this, you'll get this kind of Excel spreadsheet. And you can grab the sides and stretch that out and run it and see how big it is and get it the right size and all that sort of thing. But before we do that, the nav bar we get, which is the whole thing about doing a bound data grid view and doing all those steps and stuff rather than just dragging a data grid view out. This nav bar is really good that we get with it. The only thing is that that's stuck up the top of the form, and we need to get that so that we can move it down, because we want to put it down here with the actual data grid view. So that's going to be kind of what our next steps are about. So where it is up the top there, that nav bar, if you click in these kind of 4 dots things, you can highlight it. But what we need to do first is we're not going to be adding records or deleting with the plus and the X icons. So if you just click on that, right click on that, we need to just click on enabled so it's not ticked. And likewise on the cross symbol, the red cross that's for deleting, right click on that and just click on enabled so it's not active. And what should happen is both of those should gray out, and they should show here as grayed out, because we only want to use the forward and backward and start and finish navigators. With the data grid view on this form, it's just for looking at things, so we're not going to be actually adding or deleting, and we don't need to add a save icon on or any of those things like we've done in previous lessons. Okay, so that's got that little thing sorted. Now we're going to move that nav bar from that annoying position up the top of the form and get it down actually near where our data grid view is. So how you do that is there's some 4 on the very left-hand corner. It's hard to see probably on the video here, but there's some vertical 4 dots here. And what we do with them is we click on that, and then the nav bar is active, and there'll be a tiny little triangle arrow here that you can click on. And we need to change the docking. So we don't want it to dock itself right up here at the top of the form. We change that to none. Okay, so there's a drop down arrow on that docking, dock, and we want none. Okay, so you need to do that, and that will free it up so we can move it around. And what we did was we moved it around, shrunk it down a bit, so now it's nicely positioned here right near our data grid view. We also dragged this out a bit, and we were running our program because, yeah, you're thinking, oh, why is there all that grey space there? That looks stupid, and it does look stupid on the form design, but when you actually run it, this will expand out, and that'll all become kind of white space, kind of like an Excel spreadsheet with the table on it. So yeah, it does look funny here, but when you run it with the green arrow start, that does look good. The font sizes we've used are listed there. Now we're not going to put a group box around it just yet, because there was an issue with putting group boxes around things, because a group box would come out with this white font, and that would make all the members inside the box like this thing have white font, and then white font on white font, you can't read what the doctor is or the date. So there's some special fixing up to do about that, which we're going to show you about. So I don't have the group box there just yet, but of course it does look much neater with a group box. So we add a group box here around it, and the group box might go over the top of the whole thing, so you need to right click on it and send it to the back, obviously. And this is going to be called All Appointments, so that's really nice. That's all in a box, and we can see it's all together. But the trouble is, if you run your project when we put the code in to read the file, these will all be in white, and if you type in there, it's going to be in white and you can't see it. We need that to be in black like the headings are, so it's all going to work okay. So another thing is we've made this whole separate lesson about this group box by default is coming out light gray. Now, if you didn't want it light gray because your thing needed a color theme, say where this needed to be yellow, there isn't a color control for that outline border on the group box. I don't know why, but there isn't. And you need to go to a separate lesson which will show you how you can write some code of your own in a class to make that yellow if that's what color you needed it to be. So just be aware of that, and you can check on our YouTube channel or our website and find that other lesson. Now the following steps are going to show how to change these font colors so we don't have this white writing on white background problem later on when we're reading the file. And this is from a previous lesson. So what you need to do is on that data grid view, make sure you clicked on it, and there's a rows default style property, and we need to click on the 3 dots there for the builder. And in the builder, these panels that pop up, we need to set the font one, click on that and make that 10 for its size. And we need to click on the 4 color one, which is just underneath that font one, and go to web and pick a black color as the color we want for our text. So we need to do both of those things. So that's going to set that the boxes, what's inside them, size 10, and it's going to be in black text, and that'll all be good. So you click OK on that and OK on this one. So they're 2 separate things we do, and click OK. So make sure you do that. Now, these settings will override the problem settings that get inherited from that group box having white and gray writing. This will force the insides of the data grid view to have the nice black writing where we can actually see stuff. Now, we do have a column headers size here. So you can go to column headers default style and try and set that to 12 or 10, but this is too big, all right? Now, this default style doesn't actually fix this. It seems to get this from the group box. So if the group box has font size 12 here, for some reason these headings come out font size 12 as well. So I went through a fix for that in another lesson, and the fix was to make the group box font for this guy, say, 10 if we only wanted 10 inside here, and that'll reduce them down as shown in the bottom. By the way, this is from a previous lesson, these screen prints are not from the current lesson, but it's the same thing you need to do with this current data grid view we've got. And then you just slide a label over here that's got font size 12 on the label to cover the littler one that's in font size 10, but we went through that in a previous lesson, and that gets it looking really good. So our current form will then look like this. Okay, we've got nice font sizes, and when you run this, all this gray space will disappear, and this fits in the area perfectly. So that's all good. Now we just need to get it loaded with data so that we can see the contents of our XML file going down in the boxes on this data grid view. So that's our next step to do. So reading in the Appointments XML file. So we've done this before, and look, it's pretty easy because we set up that bound data table. Part of the reason for going through all those clicks, steps, do this, do that, was so that when we get to read the file, it's so easy. You just have to read the XML file and then have a DS appointments, our bound data set, and I'll just automatically take everything that's in the XML file and put it into our data set. Okay. And we've also added here some sorting. So what we've done is after that, it's gone into DS appointments, because DS appointments is linked up with the data grid view, it's all bound together. They're going to automatically go into the data grid view, and we're just sorting the data grid view here, and we're sorting it on the column 1, and you're thinking, oh, hang on, column 1's the first column, that's the doctor. But remember, Visual Basic starts numbering at 0, not at 1. So 0 is actually the first column, which is the doctor. 1 was the next column, which is the date. And this is sorting it on the date descending, which means the most recent dated appointments will be up the top, where we wanted to see them. So yeah, you can only seem to sort on one column with the data grid view. And with this code here, which I think we found by a lot of Googling and Stack Overflowing and messing around to get that working properly, as simple as it may seem. And then sorting on multiple columns is a problem, but we'll show you a workaround for that later on. Now, when we ran this, we thought, great, we've bound that thing, we've set it all up, bang, let's run it, it should work a treat. It didn't work a treat, it crashed. And there was an exception on the very first date that it ran into. So 22-05-2019, which looks like a perfect day, month, year type date for Australia. Well, it didn't like that, and it crashed straight away. So that was a problem that we needed to diagnose and fix. So what we did was we went back to that XSD. So we double clicked on DS Appointments XSD, and instead of having system date time on there, we changed it to system string, because ours didn't have a date and a time, and I think it needed slashes or something to be compatible. But anyway, the easiest way was that an XML file coming in anyway is just only supposed to contain text. All right, and we can convert the string date to the date format later on if we need to do data arithmetic or something. So yeah, we should have chosen system.string on that. So we just went back and changed it to system.string, and that fixed the date problem fine. So how we did that was we went into dsappointments.xsd. Here it shows out each of our records and our fields. So click on app date and just go here to data type. Instead of having date time, just have system string and fix that up. And then we ran it again, but we got a crash further down. Like everything seemed to work. But when we got to app paid, that's sort of yes, no Boolean field we'd set, we got a crash on that. The string n is not a valid Boolean value. Okay? And n, in fact, is not a valid Boolean value. It made sense with paid or not paid just to have yes or no. And why not abbreviate that to y or n? Which is just one character long. That all makes sense, but when you go to process it in Visual Basic, it's a lot more fussier and you have to have the exact value. Now we're just going to show you here how you might, a path you might go down trying to fix this. Okay, the real fix is not to use yes or no or y or n, as we'll discover later. But let's say this problem comes up, what do you do, all right? So we think, okay, well, there must be a problem in that XML file because it doesn't like y's or n's. So let's just try and make it yes and no. So we'll go in and edit our file and change everything to yes and no instead of y or n. So we got Windows Notepad out, did that editing and stuff, run it again, and it doesn't like that either. The string no is not a valid Boolean value. I wonder what the valid Boolean values are. So maybe we should do some Googling to find out. But maybe you think, okay, well look, it's a problem that it's Boolean, this app paid. Let's just forget about it being Boolean. We want to use yes, no, because that makes sense. So we'll just change it back to system string. So we do that and save it and run it again, and we still got these Boolean type errors that it doesn't like our yes, no, and it didn't like y's or n's either. So we do Google, ask Google a question. Let's ask Google for help. What is a valid Boolean value? And what you'll find out is when you do that, is that it actually has to be true or false with a little t and a little f. Because we Googled and thought, okay, it's true or false. And in the program code, you actually have to code it with a big T or a big F if you're checking it like in an if statement, you know, if app paid equals true. You can't do a lowercase t. VB forces you to do a big T. But big T and big F don't work in the XML file. The XML file must have true and false. So VB requires true, false values in that original input XML file, not yes, no, not YN, not true, false with big letters. So that was a valuable learning lesson that you would find along the way. So the main thing is when you run into a problem, just be persistent, try different things out, and go to Google, go to Stack Overflow, and look, eventually you'll get to the answer, all right? It can be frustrating, and you know, you lose time doing that, but that's kind of the process you go through to debug or fix up a program, all right? It's called debug is the word in the trade. Now, why is it called debug? Some story about with the old computers, the things started playing up and not working properly. When they pulled it apart, a bug had crawled in there and was short-circuiting some of the electrics or something. So it was called, fixing a program, it's called getting the bugs out, or debugging is what it got that name. Strange name, but that's what it is. Yeah, now it all works beautifully, yay! That's so good because all of our doctors are displaying there. We've got from the most recent date here descending, because there's a scroll bar down the side here where you can look at them all, and it's all coming up nicely. Got whether they paid or not is ticked off, or it isn't ticked. Tiana hasn't paid for her appointment. And there's only one thing with the charge, it doesn't sort of show it in a dollar format. It's just sort of 80, 70, 80, 55. So we could make that a little bit nicer, and that's what we do in the next step. If we go back to our DS users again and check out the fields, instead of system string, make the app charge, I think we had system double or something on there, make it system decimal, and then you'll get the 2 zeros showing. And we just messed around with the size of the data grid in the group box. And now it's showing 80.00, 70.00. So that's really obvious there that that's money. So that's looking a lot better. And that's done. So that's great. So the video's been going half an hour already. Like we said, it's going to be a really long one. So you might want to just take a break here, and whatever app you're using, or if you're doing our one here, sort of get that all working, just so that you've got your data grid view, you know, everything's getting read into it properly, the fonts are all looking good, you've got the sort order, but remember you can only sort on one column in this bound data grid view. So you either have to pick that you're sorting on column 0 doctor or maybe column 1 date. We just pick the date. We'll show you how to do multi-columns later on. A little workaround for that. But yeah, take a break, pause the video, take a break. You can always look in the video timeline index when you get back to continue. Whew. Alrighty, let's continue. So as we mentioned, we're just sorting on the date. Now that bound data grid view can only be sorted on one column directly using program coding. So we did get our date to go like this, descending, but we're going to show you a workaround fix later on for that, okay? So we can use a loop, and what we do is we use a loop to copy all this data out temporarily into a data table that we've defined in the program. Once it's in a data table, you can sort on multiple fields in a data table really easily. So you just sort the data table into what you want, and then you kind of copy it back into the data grid view, all right? So it's a bit like, I don't know, dishes in the cupboard can't be washed or something like that. So you take them out, you stack them in the dishwasher, do all the stuff you need to do to them, then you put them back in the cupboard and it's all good, all right? So it's a bit like that. We're taking it out of one place to process it in another place and we're putting it back again. All right, now searching the data grid view. So now we've got the thing loaded, we can start actually doing our search routine. So we're gonna add this extra part onto our form here inside a group box and have all these buttons to do doctor name plus the date that we're looking for, patient name and patient date, unpaid bill. So we're gonna have all those buttons there and they need to be called special names. So BTN doctor date, BTN patient date, BTN unpaid bills. And you'll need for some of these searches, you need a criteria. So if you're doing doctor name, obviously we need to put the doctor name in. So down here we've got a text box where they can put in the doctor name. If they're doing something to do with patients, they need to put in the patient name. So we've got something there to put in the patient name. And here we've got a date that's gonna search for things on a particular date. Okay, so we need 3 text boxes and some little labels explaining what's what in there, and that will be our little search area fix. Now the first one we're going to do is the doctor, and the cool thing you're going to find out in this video is that once we get the doctor one working, it's really easy to do the others because you just copy and paste what you had for the doctor and just change a few things here and there to change the criteria and the structure you're searching, and it's all good. So this will be the hard one that's going to take the longest time to do. All right, so you need to double click on that doctor button that we have in the searching, and we're going to add this code here. So we're just setting up that the number of records we found so far is 0, and we're getting the doctor name off the form there, out of the text box, and just putting that into a program variable called str requested doctor. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to just put them out, get the search working, but just put out the answers in a number of little message boxes, one after each other, kind of like just testing it to see whether the searching's working. Then we'll look at making the answers look a lot better than just message boxes. So we're just dimensioning some things here. That's going to be part 1, multi-parts of the text box message we're building up, and then the whole output message will be joined together and put into this variable. So we're just dimensioning some variables there for the message box output values, and then we're going to continue. And this is where we search the data grid view. Now we need an I and a J, we need loops inside loops, and the reason is because in that data grid view we've got kind of rows, you know, going down with each doctor's name on them, but inside each row you've got cells or columns. So you've got, you know, row number 1, we've got the doctor, we've got the date, we've got the time, we've got the patient. So we need to sort of be searching down the rows one by one, but each time we hit a row, we need to go along and check doctor and check date and check time. So the I loop is going down the rows, but for each row we've got an inside J loop, and J loop is jumping across and doing the doctor, then the date, then the time, then the patient. So we have a loop inside a loop, just like you would on any sort of 2-dimensional array. And when you're setting it up too, if you look carefully at your data grid view, when you get results, it always has a blank row at the bottom for if you wanted to add a new record in. So we don't want to hit that blank row. If you hit that blank row while you're processing you have all these problems because the blank row has nothing in it and it causes program crashes. So we need to go actually to the row count -2. So normally we'd need -1 because VBNet starts numbering at 0 and not at 1. But because we don't want to hit that one at the very bottom that's all blank, we use -2 here. So row count -2. The inner loop where we're just jumping across and looking at each column, that is just the column count -1 because the first column will be column 0 for the doctor, column 1 for the date, column 2 for the time, column 3 is the patient and all that sort of thing. So that's just -1 there. Then we have, each time we're going through, we want to check, is the row and cell, is the particular box we're in at the moment, does it have the requested doctor's name in it? Because if it does, that means that row is going to be an appointment for that doctor. So that's what we're checking out. Does it match the doctor name we've input? And if it does, we're just going to string together all of the things here from the cell. So the first cell's the doctor. So we're just going to string together all these components here, and that's going to come out in the message box, which you're going to see soon when we test this, and then increment how many records you've done and then go up again. All right. Now, and that's just the tail end of that loop with a next for the J loop and a next for the I loop. Now, if the number of records found is 0, so like if they type in Dr. Passy, and Dr. Passy isn't one of the doctors there, well then we need some sort of message if they don't find any records while they're looping through that data grid, and that's appointments for doctor, whatever they put in, not found, so we got a message there for if the number of records found is 0, and that's all we need at this stage, and we can thoroughly test it. So let's take it away. So Dr. von Fritz. Now Dr. von Fritz sounds like an evil character out of a James Bond movie, doesn't it? Come here, welcome to Dr. von Fritz. Well, Mr. Bond, Dr. von Fritz says that you're a dead man. Anyway, enough of that. But anyway, von Fritz has appointments with Barry Johnson and Sharon Simmons on the 23rd and the 22nd. And then they must be very sick because they had to come back and see him again on the 24th, both of them at different times. So there's 4 appointments there which should come out when we're searching for appointments for Dr. von Fritz. All right, so that's what we're expecting to happen, so let's run our program and see if it does happen. So in here you type in carefully von Fritz and click on doctor name, and our first message box will come up that has formatted all of the column values or cell values that it found on the row for that. So I found von Fritz, that's why it's one of the matches which is showing up out on this form. It's got the date, the time, and that was Barry Johnson. And then if you click OK on that message box, it'll put up the next one, which is Sharon's appointment on that same day, the most recent day, the 24th of the 5th. If you go down and click OK on that, it's going to have Barry's other appointment the day before. And if you click OK on that one, it's going to show Sharon's appointment on the day before that, the 22nd. So when we compare what we were testing here and look at the data inside each of our message boxes and compare it with our original spreadsheet data, they all match up perfectly. So this is working really well. We've got our I loop and our J loop, and together they work to find appointment records for whatever doctor we put in that text box, von Fritz in this case. And one by one, it's going to show the appointments for Dr. von Fritz on that screen. Now, we'll check all of our doctors, of course, because we want to make sure this thing works for all of the data we've got here in our testing. So Cretin has a lot more appointments, Dr. Cretin. He's really working hard, especially on the 24th. He had to see quite a few people. And so we're expecting 9 different appointments to come out when we do Dr. Cretin. So when we do Dr. Cretin, there's our first appointment, and then we've got another one and another one and another one and another one. We're up to 6 there, 7, 8, 9. So we get all 9 appointments, and when we back check against the spreadsheet table, these are all right. These seeing Tiana and Jimmy and Morgan and Leanne. Okay, that's all these patients and the dates and times. So that's all working 100% correctly and got all of Dr. Cretin's appointments. So we're just left with Dr. Brainiac. Now, Dr. Brainiac, he's got 4 appointments, and he's seeing like Tiana a couple of times, Joey, Dougie, seeing Joey a couple of times as well. So we're expecting those 5 appointments to come out when we search for Dr. Brainiac's appointment. So we put in Brainiac as the doctor, we click doctor name, and one by one these 5 appointments will come out and they match up perfectly. So whoa, the search loop, probably the most trickiest bit to build of this process is all working. It's finding the right records for whatever doctor name we put in. And we should have checked there. Oh, we didn't show it, but we also checked if you put in Dr. Passy, it did come up with that message, no appointments found. So that was working as well. So we didn't show the screen there. Oops, forgot to do about that. So now we're going to make improvements. So instead of showing all of those appointments one by one in message boxes, which is great for when you're first getting it working and testing anything, that's kind of the approach to do. So that's like the end of version 1 of our program. We've got the search loop working. So this is where we're starting version 2. If you've got the downloads for this lesson, which we really suggest you do because it's a long and complicated lesson. And in the Word doc for the downloads, you will have the version 1 code, and version 1 code was that where it's going to put out all the message boxes. Now we're into version 2, if you've got the downloads. And that's where we're going to have it come out in that bottom data grid view where it looks a lot nicer and we can see everything all at once and get it in a sorted order. So how we're going to do that is we have to set up a data table in our program. So it's not a bound one where we're using all the panels and clicking all the things and moving them around and stuff. We're just dimensioning a results data table as a new data table. So we add that up in the very top where we're dimensioning our input file. All right, so that goes right up the top. And as soon as we've made that data table, we need to have some columns which are going to be in there and give them names. So we need to add a column called doctor. That's our first column. That's going to be system string, the appointment date one. So notice we've put a T on the end here just to make them different from app date, which is in our other table. So we need to have a slightly different name. We got patient charge. Notice on charge we're setting system decimal, so we'll get the .00 on it. And we've got paid as Boolean, but the other one's a system string. So that's going to add all the columns into our internal program data table which we're building. So it's just a set of boxes and grid in a table, but it's inside the program. It's not out on the form where we can see. It's going to be inside the program where we can work on it. And this time we don't have to do all of the binding and adding and all that stuff. This time we can just drag a data grid view for this bottom one. Just go to the toolbox and drag a data grid view straight out onto the form here and put it in there. Put it inside a group box like we did with the top one because that'll all look good. Name this one down here. It's called data grid view results. And then we need to change some rows default cell style properties and things just like we did in the other one, and we're using 4 color of black for the font inside all the little boxes for this bottom one, and we're setting them to font size 9. So do all of that same sort of fiddling around like we did on the top one to get it all looking good. This one doesn't need a nav bar, so yeah, when you drag one straight out like this you don't get the nav bar. If you did want a nav bar, we showed how to do that in a previous lesson. I'm not going to do that today because this lesson's way too long already. Now we need to do the coding now that's going to, what it's going to do is that when we search for something, as we find each result, instead of popping it out in a message box one after each other, we're going to pop it out into as a row in that data table that we've got inside the program. So inside the program, we've really just built a 2-dimensional array, but we're just putting it inside the program there in memory. And then we're just going to have a thing which gets it out of that data table and onto this data grid view at the bottom. Okay, so that's where we're headed. So this message, all this message box coding we had to build the string and all this sort of stuff, and I think some previous code to dimension each of those ones as well, that can all be removed now because we're not going to use pop-up message boxes. So in this part of the code for the BTN doctor subroutine, just delete all of that stuff out that's circled here in red, and in its place we need to put this code here. So we're going to add that found row that we've got in the data grid. We're going to pop that into our data table we've made. So we have a new row we're making in our program internal data table, and we're just using str found, the cell number 0, the doctor name, putting that in the doctor one. Cell 1 in the data grid view is going to go into the appointment date in the internal data table. So yeah, we're just popping everything that we find as we find it on that top data grid view as we're searching with our IJ loop. We're just putting it into this internal data table inside the program. So that's going to take care of doing all of that. And once you've got all of the fields and columns values in there, then you just say to that results data table that's inside the program, we want to add a new row. So just called new results row, which is all of this data here. All right, so that's the code which is just going to keep adding rows to our internal data table as we find things. And what we also need is in the bottom, we need to then copy that results data table. So the IJ searching loops have found, they've found whatever they've found. If the number of records is 0, they didn't find anything for the doctor and put out the message and exit out of here. Else, they must have found some stuff, and we just copy the results data table, that internal one in our program, out into that data grid view results that's in the bottom half of our form. So that's how we'll get all of those answers out into the data grid view. And woohoo, have a look at this, how nice this is looking now. So we've got all of the stuff up in the top data grid view where we loaded up the XML file. And down in here, we've got some results. And the results were that they put in Dr. Brainiac and clicked on Doctor Name. All right, so Brainiac was entered. They clicked on Doctor Name. It went through all of these ones in the top ones, pulling out anything that was Brainiac, putting it in our internal program table, and then at the end, spitting that whole table out into the data grid view here, outputting the whole table to that. So we can see there are 5 appointments for Dr. Brainiac down here. So that is working so nicely and looks so much better than just a series of message boxes. This is looking really professional now. Now we need to do the same testing to make sure it's working for all of the doctors. So just quickly, we put in Dr. Von Fritz, or Dr. Cretin, I think, by the looks of it. And look, there was a problem now. However, and there's always a however, and I was supposed to pause there, but I forgot. Oh, maybe this is a 2 glasses of water video, it's so long. But anyway, look, there's a problem because what happens is all the ones we just did for Brainiac, the new ones for Cretin are just going to get added on to the end of this results table. So it just keeps adding on to the end of the data grid view, and that'll end up really long and complicated and give us all this stuff which we don't want, because we don't want Brainiacs, we just wanted to have Cretin stuff to look at. So we need to clear this out in between searches. So that's the next thing we need to work. We've got to clear that data table out from the previous search. And the best thing to do is as soon as the doctor name is clicked, we'll just assume there was a previous search, could have happened, and we need to clear it out before we show our new stuff here for Cretin. So that's what we're going to do, fix all that up. So at the very start, as soon as they click that doctor button, we're just going to dim a new internal program data table where we're storing results, set it all up here with some columns, okay? And because it's a new blank one, all of these columns that are set up will be blank, okay? So that's going to change that so that that will make it blank, and that's going to clear it all out at the very start. Now, we need some code for just making a default row in the search results if we don't find a doctor. So as well as putting out the message of no appointments for that doctor found, we're just going to put a blank row in that just has the name of the doctor in it. So we're adding this code here into our existing if int records found 0. So it used to just have that and the message in between the if and the message. We just added this code in, so you need to do the same. And we'll show you why that looks nicer in a minute. So let's see, this is the re-initializing or resetting it in between searches. So here they're doing Dr. Name Von Fritz and they get Von Fritz's 5 appointments. Then they change over to Brainiac and it just gives Brainiac's appointments. Sorry, Fritz had 1, 2, 3, 4 appointments. It gives Brainiac's 5 appointments. And then if they change the name to Cretin and run it again, you get all of Cretin's appointments. So you have to scroll down here because he's got quite a few. So that's all working fine. And if we enter a doctor has no appointments, this is what we were just setting up. So it'll give the message, appointments for Dr. Passy not found. So they've put in Dr. Passy, who's obviously not in this table of data. And it'll also make a default row here. So it'll set up Dr. Passy. Here you go. It shows quite clearly, no, he's got nothing for Dr. Passy there in the search results. So that just makes it a little bit more professional than just having the message and any old sort of junk hanging around down here in the search results. So we've really just about finished that doctor name search results. And it's going to be so good when we do, because the other ones are just kind of copy and pasted off this. And look, this is a really long video, but we like to build a complete part of an app or something useful in our videos. Our videos aren't just a quick, oh, here's how you do something, here's the code, type it in, blah, blah, show it to you. Yeah, that's good, that works. It's not like that. We're trying to show you a complete thing, trying to deliberately make some mistakes and show you how you do debugging and fixing things to make you the best programmer that you can possibly be. All right, now we're going to sort those output results. So that's what we're going to work on next. So we want to get it in date and time order. So it's very easy in the data table to do multi-column sorting. So when we've found an appointment for a doctor, we're just going to take the results data table and we're going to sort it when we finish making the data table here. That it's going to be an appointment date descending, so show the most recent dates, and then appointment time ascending. And you can add more columns on here and you just give them the names that you gave them in that internal program data table. So this is the way around the problem that with a data grid view, you can only specify one column to search on. Well, if you want to search on multiple columns, you've got to take your data grid view, read through it just with an IJ loop that grabs everything, put it in a internal program data table. You can sort the data table using code like this, and then you just need to put it back out onto the data grid view on the form where it can be seen again. So that's what we're going to do there to have some sorting. And we'll see that these are sorted by time and date. So let's have a look at them all. First, we've got Dr. Von Fritz's appointments. It's showing the 24th, the most recent ones, down to the oldest ones. But notice on the 24th, it shows the morning one, 11:15, before the afternoon one. So it's descending date and ascending time. And let's look at Cretin, because he was really busy on the 24th. It's showing his 10:15 a.m. appointment, then his 11:30, then his 1 o'clock, then his 1:30. Because people are, you know, the day starts here and people are used to looking at stuff in, okay, we're starting here, it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, all that sort of thing. So this works best for people checking it if it is in ascending time order. But we didn't do ascending date order because you don't want to look at some date of an appointment from 6 months ago. Usually people are inquiring about something that happened recently, so we want the most recent appointments up the top, which is the way we've got it. So that's all working and that's brilliant. Now, one more final improvement is rather than having to type the doctor name in and possibly misspelling it or leaving it blank, much better to use a drop-down list, a combo box. And since we've only got 3 doctors here anyway, this is going to be really good. So we've done combo boxes before, but if you haven't, that's a text box. You need to delete that off, go to your tools that are on the side, drag out a combo box, call it CBO, that's the abbreviation for combo box, CBO Doctor, set it to have font size 9. Then we go to the drop-down style, and this is important, make a drop-down list. That means that they can't just leave it blank, or they can't type their own one in. Actually, this will protect it from them typing their own one in over the top. So you want drop-down style to be drop-down list. I think it comes, the default is drop-down, but you want drop-down list so that they cannot type into that box. And then we need to click on the items property of our combo box, and there'll be a little triple dots builder, and you click on the triple dots builder and that'll take you into this string collection editor, as it's called. And in there we just put Brainiac, press enter, Cretin, press enter, Von Fritz, press enter, and click OK. So we're just entering our 3 doctors in alphabetical order because that's usually the most logical way that people look at things. And because we're now using the combo box and not the text box, we will have to change some code which was looking at the text box. So we need to change anything that had txt doctor name.txt to be the combo box value. Now, how you tell what they've selected with a combo box is dot selected items. So we are going to have to do some code changing. So as well as deleting the text box, adding the combo box, setting up the drop-down options for the combo box, we also need to do code changes and then we'll be done. So in the program code, if we do Control F for find and find txt doctor name, we find this where we're setting the focus. So we just need to change that to the combo box one, change this to say combo box, change that one there, and then we'll be good to go. So all of this txt doctor stuff we're going to change to CBO doctor. So it'll look like this when it's changed. Doctor name combo box in the comments, the documentation for the code, to.Doctor.focus, so we want to focus it in on that combo box, and to.Doctor.selected item instead of txt doctor name.text, we use to.Doctor selected item. So that'll get our combo box all set up, ready to go, and it's working beautifully. So you go down here and you click on that little arrow, they've picked Brainiac, and then they've clicked doctor name, and it's brought up Brainiac's 5 appointments, and that's all working perfectly. And that's just a lot more user-friendly and easier to use. So that was by far the hardest and longest one to do, and we've been going 54 minutes already. And I was thinking this should have been a part 1 and part 2 video, but it isn't. So we're gonna have to keep going. You don't have to keep going though. You can pause the video and then come back to do this. So if you just get that first doctor search working, look, that was the longest and hardest one. These other ones are going to be able to copy and paste all that code and structure we set up in doctor search and just modify it a little bit, tweak it a little bit to do these other ones. So let's have a look at doctor and date, or take a break if you want to and then come back. Doctor and date. Okay, we're going to use the date time picker to do this. So where we've got that text box where they're supposed to type in the date in Australian format, DD-MM-YYY, just delete that off. We're getting rid of that, and we're going to drag out a thing called a date time picker out of the toolbox and put it there. And that will show the current date. This was the 18th of the 6th when we were working on this. And it also shows a picture of a calendar with a little drop down arrow. So that's how you know you've got the date time picker. And we need to make a couple of changes in its properties. So as well as dragging it out and having it there, on the custom format, we're going to use DD-MM-YYY. Now the MM has to be in big M's because big M's is for month, little M's is for if you're doing time and it's minutes. So this was all covered back in our previous dates lesson. So go back to that if you don't know a lot about using date and you want to know more. But custom format has to be DD-MM-YYY. I guess in the US, if you're doing month first, you'd have MM-DD-YYY. And the format we're using is a custom one. So I've got to change format to custom, and that's going to be our custom format that we're using, because we don't want the time. We just want to have the date here in this particular format. And this whole date time picker too, make sure its name is called DTP appointment, all right? It has to be spelt like that so it's going to work in the code. So for its name property, make sure you make that DT appointment, and then that's going to be all good. Now, the problem is that you know, it's still, even making these changes, what's going to happen is that the appointment value that comes out will include the time as well, which is a pain. So we need to use this reformatting code, which we learnt when we did the date functions lesson previously. So we're going to have to still do a little bit more work to get this going, but it will be well worth it, trust me. So double click on the doctor and date button, because we now want to search for a particular doctor name and a particular date that they've got appointments on. And we need this reformatting here. So we're going to have a str user selected date, so we know what date they selected. And what you have to do is you have to do DTP appointment dot value, the value that we're getting out of that date time picker, and then do a .toString conversion. We want just the day, the month, and the year. We don't want the time included as well. And that will do the trick. So as well as making all those changes in the properties, you also do need this line of code, this one here, which is going to get rid of the time and only have the date. So it'll discard the time portion and only have the date. So we'll try this out. We're just having a message box to show. So always use message boxes just to test things out. And so with this date time picker, you click on this and it gives you like a month, a whole little calendar, and we click on the 5 for June, and it'll put the 5th of June in there, which is really nice, because the other nice thing about this is you don't have to do user validation. They can't mess it up. They can't type in 55-06. So we don't have to have horrible validation routines. Well, they're not horrible, but they're just long and a lot of work to make and test. But this will do all the checking for us because it only lets them pick valid dates. So doctor and date, we click on that button, and what happens is it tells us the date via this message box we set up here. Date from the date time picker is 05-06-2019. That's the exact format we wanted in, because that's the format that we've got the dates in our XML file, remember, as system.string. And this is kind of going to, if you think about it, this is why using system.datetime was wrong back when we were setting up that bound data table, because it's just text in the XML file. So we wanted it to just be a text thing here that was in that same day, month, year format. That's beautiful. That matches the XML file. That's going to work really nicely. Now, using the datetime picker, we'll just show you some stuff about that. When you set up a datetime picker, because we're in June when we were writing this, yeah, it would just bring up June here, but you could go back, like click that little back arrow there and go back to May and pick a date in May if you needed to. Or you could click that right arrow while you're on June, and that'll take you ahead to the next month, July, and you can keep clicking and going August, September, October. But if you've got a long way to go, what you do is you just click on that month while the current month is up here. Click on June, and what'll happen there is it'll bring up all the months for 2018. So we can easily jump to August, September, back to January, back to February without clicking forever on the little navigators. And then if you click on the year, once you're in this view, so we're clicking on the year, what'll happen there is that'll bring up all the years. So you can go back to previous years. Now, if you want an old year, like say you wanted some date of some battle that happened in World War II in 1944 or something, it's going to take forever to scroll back to 1944. So you can actually click this one more time, and if you click it one more time, it gives you ranges of years. So if we needed to get back to 1944, we'd get down to the ranges, and then we'd just use this back button a few times and pretty quickly be able to get down to where the 1940s were. And then if you click again, I think it just loops around. So if you click again, it will just go to the current year. And if you click again, it goes to this, and you click again, it goes to the range. So I think if you keep clicking, it will just keep going around between those three. So yeah, the datetime pick is great. And the very best thing is that the user can't mess it up, right? It's like the combo box drop-down list. They can only pick one thing, so you don't have to do validation to check for typos or mistakes or misunderstandings. It's all good with the datetime picker. All good and all fixed up for you. So program code, doctor and date. Just copy in all that code from BT and doctor. So double click on doctor and date button, and then go back to where we did the doctor button. Copy and paste all the code in. We're going to try and speed up here because it's a long video, and we just have to make a few changes. So we're going to add that stuff in which I already showed you to reformat the date, and then we had here that if there's no doctor entered in, then we need to check if the requested doctor is not equal to nothing. So as long as we've got a doctor, which we're doing here, rather than just check for the doctor when we're going through our IJ loop, right, we're also going to extend that line. So we've got an underscore here to extend it. We're going to say that we need that doctor and we need this particular date as well. So that's going to put a double criteria on the searching. So that's a modification to existing code that we're making. And then what we need to do down here is if no doctor's found and we're making that default row, we just need to show doctor name and whatever the selected date was and set all the other ones to nothing. And also the message box that comes up if there's no records found. So if they put in Dr. Passy and any old data which find no records, and it needs to also have a message box, appointments not found, and add on to that message box with a new line, a VBC character and line feed for the requested date of, all right? So that's in there. So look, that was just a few little minor changes, and we should have our doctor and date ready to go. So if we put in no doctor here at all and just click doctor and date, it's going to say enter a doctor name and click on the doctor button again. So that's all good. So it will default though to today's date. So just remember that. It doesn't get fussed about no date in there because it just defaults to today's date unless you use the datetime picker to change it. So that was good. We got the error message given, so that one all worked. Test number 2, the date's not selected, so it uses today's date. So what's happened here is we've picked Dr. Brainiac, all right? Then we haven't bothered picking a date, so it's just stayed on today's date. Then we've clicked the doctor and date button here, And of course, for today's date, in our original data, there's nothing for Brainiac. So it's formatting up this default row. Brainiac with this date, you can see it's blank. He's got nothing. And it's also giving you a message box telling you the same thing with a second line that tells you the requested date. So all of that code that we added in is all working as well. And what if we put in the correct doctor and the correct date? So let's look at Brainiac. On the 24th of the 5th, Dr. Brainiac had 2 appointments, one with Tiana and one with Joey. So if we put in Brainiac and 24 for the 5th, we'd expect to find these 2 appointments. So let's do that. So we've selected Brainiac. We've used our date time picker. We actually clicked on this calendar and got ourselves to 24 for the 5th, 2019, and clicked on that. And then click doctor and date, and yes, we did get those 2 appointments for Joey and Tiana at 15:30, 11:30, 11:30, 15:30. It's sorted into time order, so that's all good. That is working beautifully. Doctor and date search is done, and the correct records were found, as we saw there, so that's great. And now we can go on to the unpaid bill search. So naturally, we tested that code for the other doctors and some dates as well, not just Brainiac, but that was all working. So unpaid bills, again, just go to your BTN doctor subroutine, double click on the button unpaid bills, go to the subroutine, copy and paste all the code in, and we've just got some changes to make. Now, because we're not worried about a particular doctor, a name or a date, we can just take all that stuff out that was doing the string requested doctor. So that's all been removed from here, where it used to be in this code. Okay, for when we're doing BT and unpaid bills. So we've copied all the doctor code in here, just not for doctor and date, but just doctor code. We've put all that in here and left it all in here. We've taken out that stuff about the requested doctor, and then we don't need to have an inner J loop either, because we're just looking for a row that just has that one particular cell. Unpaid is not ticked. It's actually false at the moment, which means they haven't paid. And so we're just looking here. The only criteria you need is that to go down through each row, and as we hit each row, just go to cell 5, the last cell, cells brackets 5, and check whether that's false with a capital F, even though in the Boolean it had to be little f in the input XML file. In the actual program code checking, which we were talking about earlier, it's actually a capital F. So this will find all of the ones where we have not ticked off that the bill is being paid. And as you find each one, you just format an output row and you get it put into your results data table. So all that code stays there the same as usual. We're just changing this code in here and not having an inner J loop. And then if something's not found, we can format up a completely blank record and give them a message, no unpaid bills were found, all bills have been paid. So we can do all that. And then the modifications we make for that little section, when we've copied and pasted the doctor stuff, just change it like this to be the unpaid bills stuff. And when we test it, test number 1, find and display unpaid bills. So in our original data, there were 4 unpaid bills here. We've got that Tiana has been a couple of times and hasn't paid. Well, we need to not give her any more appointments. And Kardash, she hasn't paid. And Bertrand, Tiana Bertrand has not paid. So when we click the unpaid bills, just click that one straight away. What happens is we get all 5 of those unpaid, all 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 of those unpaid bills for Tiana Bertrand. She needs to pay her bills. Now we will cut her off and not give her any more breadsticks, and no more for her until she pays. And Jenna Kardash. Jenna Kardash, she changed her name to Kardash because she wanted to be American. Yeah, she has not, and she wanted to be a Kardashian, but it was illegal to use the same name, so she changed it to Kardash. Sorry, I'm ranting. I've been too long under the hot light making the video. Yeah, so look, they're all coming out. That's all working fine for the unpaid bills. So in a separate upcoming lesson, we're going to have, we did one more test too, and there's a fault in the animation here. But anyway, we didn't have any dates that started with 0, and we wanted to just check out that that worked okay. We're a bit suspicious. So what we could do was, up in this top one, we're just going to change this Brainiac appointment that's unpaid to have an 07 in it, and just check that the date stuff with a 0 for the leading date. There's 07. Just check that works all right. And it did work all right because the one that was 07 that we doctored up here before we clicked on unpaid bills did come out all right. So we knew, okay, that's all working. It doesn't chop off the 0 and then not find the date match or anything like that. Now, in an upcoming lesson, we're going to have a function so that we'll have a pop-up screen. You can click on any of these people and there'll be a pop-up screen that's going to format up an email that someone can send to these people, asking them, reminding them that they've got unpaid bills they need to pay as soon as possible. But that's going to be in a previous lesson, because this lesson at 1 hour and 8 minutes is already way too long already, and I think has probably filled us up with enough new knowledge to go off and have a lot of fun doing searching and filtering and formatting and sorting. So look, it's great. Once you get something into a data grid view in VBNet, you can do so much with it. And that's why we love data tables and we love data views. And we're going to increase your love for them too by giving you a challenge task. So we didn't do the coding for the patient search button or the patient plus date button. But look, you should be easily able to do that. If you just take the doctor code and copy and paste it into whatever is there already. When you double click on the patient button, there will be nothing there. Copy and paste all the doctor stuff in there. And when you click on the patient plus date button, copy and paste all the doctor plus date coding which we developed. And look, it's easy to make some changes. And what will happen here is if they put in patient here, Freddie Fortnight, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, Freddie was told that he needed to go to the doctor to try and do something about that fortnight addiction, because it meant that he could not live any of his life at all or do any of his school assignments, particularly for information technology computing, because he was too busy playing Fortnite because he was addicted. Fortnite, it looks like heaps of fun. I don't play it, but the students at school love it. And look, it does look like fun, but it's such a time sink. It just sucks you in and you get stuck there for hours playing. I know from former game addiction in a previous life. So Freddie Fortnight was supposed to go see the doctor about this, but Freddie, it looks like he was too busy playing his games and he has not booked in and seen the doctor, because when we put him in, there are no appointments for Freddie Fortnight, so it's telling us that. Someone who has made an appointment is Joey Peterson. He's had a couple of appointments now with Dr. Brainiac. So Joey Peterson, we can put in his name there, click on patient name, and his previous appointments will come up. Okay, now it's no use trying to make a drop-down list for patient name, because we could have an infinite number of patients just wandering into this doctor's medical center to make appointments. But the thing is, if Joey rings up or comes in, they can go, oh yeah, Joey Peterson, they put it in, they go, I usually see Dr. Brainiac, would you like to see him again, right? So that will help them with their information system. And then you can also set up the date time picker to link that in for the patient plus date, and that should consolidate your learning for this lesson. So remember, we do have the whole programming course on our website, so we have been talking about previous lessons. If you wanted to find all those previous lessons about XML files and dates, you could go to PassyWorldOfICT.com, just click on the programming tab, and it'll have listed down lesson after lesson after lesson, and you can find the particular ones you're looking for. So that's it for this video. Hopefully this is starting to tie everything together for you guys to be able to build applications, particularly the students here in Victoria. They're using these videos because they need to build their major application for their assessment. So we've got some XML files we can use to handle input, and from all of the lessons we've done so far, you should know now how you could add new records into those XML files, how you can update records, save back out to the XML file, how you can delete something from that file if you need to. And now we have the programming and technical capacity so that we can actually search, filter, and sort those files as well. So this is pretty much, you know, getting to be a complete real system, because that's what most data processing systems need to do. They just need to have the things stored externally. We're not kind of worrying about encryption of the stuff that's stored. We've just got it stored externally in plain text. They need to bring it in onto the screen, show it to the people. People need to look at it, to be able to do sorts, searches, filters, just to see bits and pieces of it. Then they also need to make changes to it and be able to save those changes back out to the external file. So all of that kind of technology is there now for you to use. So if you liked this lesson and found it useful, give it a thumbs up. And also remember to subscribe to our channel because we're putting out new videos each week. Hopefully next week we're hoping to do the one for those people that didn't pay those bills, where you can click on each person and it's going to pop up a separate form screen and it's going to format an email to them reminding them that they need to pay their bill. And then whoever's on that screen could just scrape that, copy and paste it into their email application, send that off to the patient to get them to pay their bill. So that's what we're doing next. We're just looking at output. And yeah, we'll see you in the next lesson. Enjoy programming with VB.net.